Hello, I'm Charlotte from Creative Wilderness, and welcome to Brand Stories, a series that's going to go behind the brand of some of the amazing entrepreneurs, business owners, and startups I've worked with. I'll be asking them how they found the whole branding process, why building a brand is so important, and a story behind their brand so that you too can feel empowered and inspired by their brand story. So, let's hear the brand story. Welcome to another one of my brand stories, and I'm so excited to have the wonderful Paul from Root Web Design Studio, joining us. And Paul, you're probably better. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell people kind of what you do, a little bit about Root, and an interesting fact that you've about something maybe you've done this week?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me today, Charlotte. It's very kind of you. So as I say, I'm Paul Jardine. I'm the founder of Root Web Design, and we're a low carbon web design studio, building and designing websites that are very efficient. And the idea is to minimize the carbon output of them as much as possible. Something interesting I've done this week. Well, we just had a little girl very recently. So yeah, she's taken up a lot of my my time at the moment, which is very exciting. And yeah, I'm hoping this business will, we're aiming to kind of make a bit of a more positive future, which is kind of really hit home since our daughter arrived.
Oh, that's amazing to hear, because sometimes it's like your life changes, doesn't it? And then because you've been in business 10 years before that, also doing
closing in now, closing in on 10 years, yeah.
So, but before that, just to explain, so Paul was kind of operating more as your name, weren't you? So like a solo web designer, I suppose, and then you've taken the brave step to kind of rebrand and be a studio. So we're gonna talk a bit more about why Paul's doing this, learn a bit more about low carbon web design, because it's something that's quite new and it is very exciting. So it's all about being a bit more sustainable in your web design. And then we did an amazing brand exploration in nature, which tied in with Paul's kind of name about Root. So we're going to talk about how that all came about, and yeah, just the kind of journey and some web design stuff and how the project was. And if you're thinking of rebranding, it'll be probably a really useful conversation to listen into, because Paul's business was doing good things before that. So it was almost like, what's next, I suppose. So maybe, we could ask a little bit more about what sustainable web design means to you, because that's the thing that you kind of prompted you to start looking into that a bit more.
Yeah, well, I suppose the last couple of years, really been thinking about kind of how I can do what I do better. Like, I kind of think the web design sort of digital marketing industry as a whole is not in the best place, really. I think it's kind of an attitude of just because we can do something, we should. So that means making very inefficient websites which have lots of things on just because the technology is there to do it. And the same applies to kind of like tracking as well. Like I'm very much a digital privacy advocate, and it kind of tends to be a attitude, which is kind of the industry standard, is to track everything just because we can, and you're kind of overlooking kind of the ethical side of that, and also like all these tracking scripts you add slow the page down a lot, and that really bulks up the carbon footprint as well. So that's kind of the main driver, really. And yeah, I think so. Really, the aim of Root is to kind of go against these kind of industry standard practices and suggest is there a better way of doing things, and that kind of pulls in everything really, from the development to the design, the copywriting, and even kind of the marketing of your website.
I love how it goes really deep, and I think that's one of your inspirations behind the name of Root, and we'll be talking a little bit more about how that came about. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think people who are maybe thinking about making their business more sustainable, do you think they think about their website? Have you noticed people thinking about it a little bit more, or has it been something, they're focusing more on like products and the energy supplier they use and deliveries?
But I think I don't think many people are aware of it because it is a very difficult thing to visualize. Because I always say it's not like your phone gives out, sort of it doesn't exhaust pollution every time you load a website out. It's kind of a hidden thing, really. So I don't think a lot of people are aware of it. So this is something I really want to spread the word about and kind of educate people on ways to kind of minimize your output, whether you're kind of developing a whole new site or you want to kind of optimize your existing site. I think if I can educate people to just make that little bit of progress as you go, then it does add up to quite big wins over the long term.
Definitely. And you've chatted a bit about, it's not just about these kind of practical things of making images smaller and that, but you spoke a bit about like the humans that are going to be visiting the website and how you're treating them. So you take that sustainability, but you're going into the ethics as well. Have you got any some of those bad practices that people might be doing that aren't great in the sense of like your ethical web experience, and what you do en route to kind of overcome those things?
Yeah, I think the three things. First of all is, I suppose from like a tracking perspective, that's quite an ethical dilemma a lot of people have, especially for small businesses. Like you're kind of encouraged to measure all these things. So like like page views are useful, but a lot of the time, if you're using software, say like Google Analytics, that will track a lot more personal things that as a business you don't necessarily need. And especially if you're a small business, realistically, you're not going to have the time or resources to study it anyway. So the benefit for you as someone putting these scripts on your website, it's the real beneficiary is kind of, like these massive companies like Google who are getting everyone's personal data, but the person who's using these scripts isn't really going to have the time or expertise to really make the use of it. So I always think you have to decide. This goes into like designing the site as well. Like, what do you actually need? Like, it's taking a more minimal approach. Like, do I need to track these things? Do I need to include like a massive image gallery on the home page of the website, which is going to slow it down and give more carbon emissions? Or can I capture the same kind of feeling? Can I accomplish the same thing by doing it in a more minimalist way? And the other thing I tend to look at from an ethics perspective is kind of it's kind of the kind of phrase that gets banded around is kind of devious design, where you're trying to sort of trick people into doing things. I think you tend to find this a lot on the example that used to be would be on kind of like airline websites where they'd put on all the hidden fees and you could only turn them off, like the button would be hidden somewhere at the back, and something like making the thing that the company wants you to do would be a big button, whereas the decline would be a little text link which would be hidden somewhere in the corner. So that's something I'm very much against. Like, I do believe that people should do something because they want to, and because you can supply that need rather than you having to push them in that direction. And that kind of ties into the whole sort of, this is something that's come from kind of social media side of things, where it's kind of designed to be addictive and, pushing someone into keep reloading something. Whereas really from a minimalist perspective, I just want someone to do something once. And then if that sort of journey is designed well enough, someone can do that and then get on with their day. And the site doesn't have to reload again. So that minimizes the carbon output. And that's something which I really want to push really going forward.
Yeah, it's that experience, because I mean, I experience it's like some websites is very stressful, accessibility wise, if people are like visually very overstimulated, some of them are horrendous. And like you say, you're thinking about that website, it's like a space that someone's coming on and you want them to enjoy it, you want them to feel good, you don't want them to get to the end point and feel like a horrible feeling. And do you think that stuff helps brands create their loyalty a bit more and a better relationship with their customers?
I think so. Yeah, it's a funny thing when you're kind of doing this kind of minimalist approach. When you do it right, people won't be aware you're doing it at all. I think a lot of the things I try to push is you're avoiding something negative. So, for example, if you have a very well optimized website, as well as it having a low carbon footprint, if it loads fast, you're going to avoid frustrating your customers, because you know how annoying it is when you go on a website, it takes ages to load. Or you go to click something and like an image will load in and you'll click something else instead. That is annoying, and that gives you a very negative relationship with that brand. And you think, oh well, especially if you're like shopping for something, you're like, well, I'm not going to stick around and buy something here. I'm just going to click elsewhere, because anything you have immeasurable options to do something. If you're presenting a negative experience, there's zero reason why someone should stick with you and not just go elsewhere.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel here a lot of small business owners, they're worrying about doing loads of Instagram posts or and they actually forget about their website. And you're really passionate. I want to chat to you more a bit about your kind of digital minimalism later, because we'll chat more about that, your rebranding process. But yeah, do you feel that, people think that website, they just kind of forget about it? And is there a reason why?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just feel your website should be the center of your target if you're kind of promoting your business. Everything you do should go on your website first. So, for example, if you're doing a social media post, do it as a blog on your website first, and then you can take parts of that content and repurpose it for different social networks, for your newsletter and so on. I think because it's a slightly slower process. If you put a blog up, that will eventually get picked up by search engines, but that takes a bit of time. Whereas I think social media is more of like an instant gratification thing. It's like I could spend a couple of hours writing a social post, which might get to people within seconds, essentially, but then it'll be gone again in a few hours, and then it's done. All that time you spent writing that post is gone. Whereas if it's on your website, it's always there, and you can always refer back to it in the future. And that is growing your your online presence, as opposed to it being a fleeting thing that's gone again very, very soon.
Yeah, and that ties more in with your ethics, doesn't it? About it being like a sustainable business as well. So you're not relying on, quick fix social media posts. That you've got something that putting down strong roots. So we're gonna chat a bit about root and kind of your journey of rebranding. So did you have a sense, like, was there a point when you went, right, I really need to rebrand? Kind of, can you take us on your journey of how you got to the point of deciding you wanted to form Root?
Yeah, I think as you said earlier, I've kind of been for 8-9 years been operating as kind of a sole trader, freelance. It's kind of my business was my name, so essentially I was the business, and I think there's kind of a mental blockage as presenting yourself as a tradesperson versus a business. So I think there's kind of a limit to the size of projects people believe you can take on as a single person, even though for the most part I would be working with other creatives as well and getting a team together for a job. There's that sort of mental blockage, I think, from the capacity you have as a person, as opposed to, say, a studio, even if you are, for all practical terms, operating in the same way. So the other side of the rebrand was I really wanted to reflect better the kind of business I was doing. So, representing the ethical side and the environmental side, what didn't come across at all, even though that was kind of at the roots of how I've been operating for quite some time. I really wanted that to better come across when they meet me. I want them to feel like I am the person, or we are the business that can help you if you're wanting to reduce your digital carbon footprint.
Amazing. And this is why I'm really excited about this chat, because it's kind of like and the thing about branding is what you're doing isn't changing. You obviously you're more focused on the kind of ethics and the sustainability behind the websites you build, but your brand is like a different experience, and you kind of, like you say, trying to attract different people, and you're hoping it's going to put you out there as a place where people would make that bigger investment in route. So
Yeah,
we went
absolutely.
out into nature for our very first kind of initial workshop around like exploring the roots of route, and it was kind of the first time, would you say, that you'd done anything like that, getting out into nature and thinking about some of those bigger brand vision questions?
Yeah, it was a new experience, and I absolutely loved it, to be honest. I think, yeah, it was really good. Like the exercises we did, I was able to clear my head really well, and kind of, I think a big part of your process is sort of following your intuition, isn't it? So I think you were able to draw some really good answers out of me when you were asking questions. I think had we just been sat in a room doing that, I don't think we would have got the same experience. And I was really blown away about how well you actually you listened to me and you really got what I was saying. Like when I was, when I think about this stuff, like I don't think I'm particularly good at kind of expressing myself a lot of the time, but what I was saying did get through, and I think that's a testament to you rather than the what I was saying. I thought you were fantastic, and the end result of what we had, you really, it's like you extracted that directly from my brain. I thought that was wonderful.
And how did being in nature compare? Did you notice you were thinking differently, or I know you said you came up with things that you wouldn't have come up with when you were sat around a desk. Was there anything that you can think about that stood out to you as being different, as opposed to if we just had a Zoom chat about it, or you'd filled in a questionnaire?
I'd just been able to sort of breathe freely, and you really sort of slowed me down. And we did the guided meditation, and that was fabulous. Really, like just slow your brain down. I was thinking a lot of the ideas I have are kind of bouncing around in the back of my brain, and this is kind of just being able to slow everything down enough to extract them, I think, and it was really nice. And when we were doing the choosing the different items to represent different parts of the business, I thought that really slowed us down as well. And yeah, I thought it was really enjoyable, and it was useful. Like it really helped me to kind of settle myself and sort of get out the ideas that I kind of wanted you to hear.
Yeah, I think that's why I love taking people out into nature, because you're away from the external noise, and we can be quite easily influeed with what's going on or what we see around us, and forget, about what we're all about. And then if you don't tune into that at the start of building your brand, it can kind of lead to something that doesn't feel truly like you, or you kind of like, oh, it's not quite got it. But I was super clear on everything when you did it. And I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, I've got all this stuff in my head, but it doesn't make sense. And I always think it does make sense. It's just, having a few of those little exercises about it, that help you do it. Was there anything that surprised you or on during it at the end?
Really, I was just like, I was just really so blown away by how well you interpreted everything. So I was, I think it's just a testament to how good a listener you are and how well you could interpret everything. I thought you were great, Charlotte.
Oh, well, you put all the amazing work into it, so I can't really take all the credit. But yeah, I'm gonna have a quick cough. So you've rebranded now. You're kind of tentatively putting the website together for Root. How does it feel now? You've got this brand ready to go.
I feel a lot more confident. Absolutely, it's like, it does feel like a new chapter for. Well, in a way, it feels like a completely new business, even though it's kind of a transition to what I was doing to this new step. In a way, it does feel like we're starting again, which is fantastic, and I feel a lot stronger in being able to sort of approach sort of larger style projects, and even feeling like more of a business. I suppose it's a strange. I suppose a lot of small business owners might kind of relate to this, where thinking, "Oh, I'm just a person," even if you are technically a business. Now I feel like like Root Web Design Studio is a legit business, which is great.
It's so true, because I think when we're just we are our brands in a way, but also I feel like when you've got that support of a bigger brand that's everything about what you do, it makes it, yeah, I find you just feel more confident. And even though you are still the personal side behind it and you're bringing a lot of stuff into it, like you say, it just gives you a bit more power. And we're both really passionate about helping independent businesses to thrive, aren't we? And sometimes that can stop them in a way, because they're, not seeming as their service or their product is going to be as good as one of the more bigger, even though it will be, but something like their website and their branding will maybe let them down, and maybe their confidence in, I suppose, like pricing as well. Do you think that's something that having a better website experience and a better brand experience, it gives them more confidence around that? Have you experienced anything like that with people you've worked with, or your own experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to invest in my own branding was because, if I want people to invest in hiring my services and like the services of Root, like how can I expect people to do that if I've not been able to invest myself? Like, so the way now I can, if I'm sort of feeling unconfident about pricing a job in a certain way, well, I can say, well, I myself was able to do this, so other people can as well. So I think that's quite an important standpoint. And as well, like as a web designer, I have to lead by example and have as great a website as possible and really have as low carbon a website as possible, which is kind of why the entire brand was designed around being able to produce such an efficient website, which has as low carbon output as possible.
And if people are choosing between, we're very fickle online, aren't we? We've got lots of choices, and I think we can find stuff now that really fits with our ethos a little bit more. So yeah, if someone's going on a product-based website and another one, and this one's made sure it's all intentionally designed, it's got a low carbon footprint. Is that the right word for the website?
Yeah.
Low carbon footprint. You'll choose that one, even if maybe they're selling pretty similar products. So it is like a deeper experience and more intentional. So I think people, especially with web design and branding, they are bigger investment services, aren't they, than kind of, say you were getting a photo shoot. It is an investment, but it's not quite as big an investment, or I suppose as timeline investment as well as website and branding. So have you got anything you can share about that, and how you talk to people who maybe probably need to invest in their website, but the big chunk of money that they're going to have to invest at the start, that they might have like fear around it, or like, whoa, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, no question. Like when you're sort of invested in a big piece of work, like a new website, there is that initial fear. So I think I always think from a business perspective, you have to consider whether doing so is going to, from like a financial perspective, if I spend this much money, can I confidently pay for it afterwards? Like is sort of creating this new greater brand, better experience, better website, is that going to bring me, say, more business or save me more time than if I stayed with my existing setup? Really, I think that's the important thing. Like in terms of from my experience from investing in getting this greater branding, like I'm highly confident that I'll be attracting a new audience of clients and we'll be doing work in no time, really. So that's why I was confident in making the investment. But there's a few different angles you can take. Is whether I put in the initial investment up front, or whether you do it in kind of steps where you might do sort of smaller improvements to your existing site and kind of nudge yourself along to being able to kind of make a bit more money through your business from small improvements, and then taking that larger leap later down the line when you think you've kind of grown in just from making small adjustments, which is how I work with a few people.
Yeah, you're very accessible, aren't you, in kind of what people need. And I think you'll let people know if at that point it's better to do this and then wait a year and test it out. And I say the same sometimes with people's brands. If they're not, it might be better for them to wait a year, kind of get the business going, making sure it's working well, and they know who their customers are and that type of thing, and then go, right, yeah, and then once that's all sorted, I'm going to invest in my branding, I'm going to invest in my website at that point.
Yeah, I think like in terms of the journey of growing your business, like having a solid brand is kind of your first step. So if someone's got a limited budget, I will usually say focus on getting your brand together first, and then you can come back to me later on down the line when you've got that kind of base in place, really, and then we can take things from there.
And how can a great brand and website experience, how do they work together for anyone who's kind of interested to see how they're sort of like partners in crime, I think, or partners in positive, I don't know, positive crime. But yeah, how have you experienced them working together with any projects that you've worked on?
Yeah, well, I suppose with the root site, like the brand was designed with the end game that it could be adapted into a low carbon website. So one of the main factors in minimizing your sort of the efficiency of a website is like you want to limit the amount of images that are on the page and any sort of large graphics. So with like our logo and all the different like illustrations you designed, Charlotte, those were all things that could be adapted into it's what's known as a vector graphic, and that's where it's not an image, it's effectively it's a code image, and they're really, really efficient. So when I was building it, that could be turned into a very efficient graphic which just goes into the website's code. So in all, whilst the low carbon side kind of has, you have to be good at the development, you need to have a design and a brand at the start, which allows you to do that. So it's one of those things when you're designing it, you have to design in your brand and your logo, whether this will work going forward when you actually get to building it is very important, I think.
And when you're trying to minimize the amount of stuff and the amount of images, creating that amazing brand that's going to connect with people simply. I think that's another thing that's really important, isn't it? Because like you've invested in making sure your copy is really good and straight to the point, and very quickly people can get a sense of what you all are all about. So you've really gone very minimal but very powerful on it. And I will share a link to kind of talking through all the clever things that we did. And Paul had some amazing ideas of how we can make it even more low carbon and efficient when he went around and built the website. So I'll link to the Root website as well, and you can have a little look over it and see what he's done, and marveled at the low carbon web design that he's created.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of it, the home generally it's recommended you should aim for a web page having something like 0.05 grams of carbon when it loads, which that's pretty low. That's way below the average. But from what we did, we managed to do, it was like 10% of that. So it was 0.05, which is like nothing basically, which I was really proud of. And we couldn't have done that had it not been designed that way by you in the first place. Yeah,
I think more people are going to start looking into it. I've noticed, can't remember which site it was on, but it was a clothing site, and instead of having the images, they just had a vector of like a t-shirt, and then if you actually wanted to click on it, then it loaded the image. So yeah,
that's brilliant. That's really good.
So we'll probably see lots more of that in the future. So a couple more questions. I know you're really passionate about digital minimalism, and you've been on an amazing journey around that. How has that inspired your kind of approach to business now?
Yeah, well, I suppose the idea of digital minimalism is to reduce the amount of, say, digital tools you use to use them more effectively, really, in a way that suits you. So as a typical example, it's like from a social media side of things, it's like not going on and scrolling for half an hour and kind of accomplishing nothing. It's about thinking, right, well, I want to post something on this day, that day. So I'm going to schedule a bit of time a bit of time to write all 3 posts, and then I can get that done in 20 minutes as opposed to having all these kind of interruptions as I go. Oh, pardon me. And even I've gone to but I'm trying to structure things where I send emails in kind of blocks during the day rather than kind of being distracted by it all the time, and kind of limited how much time we do that. And it all adds up. It gives you much more time in the day to focus on the important things. And yeah, it's kind of, I've been doing this for nearly sort of 2 years now, and it has helped a lot. So in the end, I really kind of stripped back social media use because I didn't find it that valuable to my particular business. So I think now I'm only really have a presence on like LinkedIn now, because using the other stuff, I didn't think it was that worthwhile for the amount of time I was having to put into it myself. So it's just about limiting.
Anything negative when you went off that Instagram and Twitter and stuff, did you? Was there
No, because I found I was spending the time elsewhere in more effective ways. And I know it was quite a big leap, but as well, I suppose I approach this in quite the privileged position that I'm at the time. I'm a fairly well-established business of say 8-9 years now. So I thought it'd be better for me to focus on providing a better experience for my existing clients and constantly trying to hook in new people or new inquiries. If I can just focus on doing less stuff but better, that would work well, and it has been so far, which is really great.
Yeah, it's really taking that traditional idea of growth and going, actually, growth can be what you just making what you provide better, not getting loads more customers in, but how can you serve those customers better and make your service better? So it's like an antithesis of the traditional way of growing your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something I really want to promote with Root as well. Kind of as well, sort of the sustainable side from the environment. It's actually just sustainably growing your business in a slow way, which, you're not going after growth at all costs by doing all these kind of unethical practices and stuff that isn't going to last in the long term. It's kind of taking slow steps, but stuff that will work well.
Amazing. And anything exciting on the horizon for Roots that you can share?
So I started taking the initial bookings for projects next year, which is really exciting. And it's been really, really fun. Kind of because this is starting from scratch from a degree, it's kind of growing this all the way I want to work with new clients, applying this to the Root website itself. So it's kind of focusing on a good search engine optimization strategy, and kind of getting at the moment I'm working on getting blogs together, which will actually serve a purpose for people. And hopefully these will also be articles which people who might want to work with Root will find as well. So it's been quite interesting because I'm only really trying hard just to have a few core articles as opposed to doing lots and lots just to kind of get clicks on. I want to have fewer clicks, but of the right audience. I always say you want to find the right audience, not a bigger audience.
I love that. That's such a good piece of advice.
Yeah, which I think is quite a good mantra to look towards.
Yeah, you could have thousands of people on your website and none of them are interested, and then 10 and all 10 of them are interested. It's way more powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, the most efficient website is one that doesn't load at all, which is completely counterintuitive. Yeah. But I would rather have, say, 100 people visit a website who want to work with me than sort of 10,000 who don't. It's about doing that less is more approach, really, and quality over quantity. I think that's the best way for the for society and the planet. I think is something we all need to do to think more about, really.
Yeah, definitely not that kind of throwaway experience. It's been super inspiring hearing you're still doing similar stuff, but you've kind of like tweaked your brand and your business? Because I think some people get to a point, maybe they're like frustrated with their business, or they're not working with the people they want to, and they might just quit. But I think what it's shown you is you've gone, I like this, but actually I want to do this, and I want to grow, and I want to bring my ethics, and you kind of rebranding. So it'd be great to hear how it's gone in the year, I suppose, as you kind of go on.
Yeah, the best piece of feedback I've had, Charlotte, is that people have been saying the new brand is very much more me, which I think is a real testament to your work.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And finally, can you share maybe one top tip of how people could quickly improve their website experience?
Yeah, well, in terms to optimize a site, you want to reduce the number of things on the site. So a lot of the time that might be, say, images. If you've got a lot of images on a page, thinking about whether to cut them down. Like, do you need 10 images, or can you achieve the same thing through 5 or 3? And that will add up, even though it doesn't feel like a big thing. Like, you'll cut down the amount of carbon you produce over a year quite well. And the other thing you do is shrinking the number of images, shrinking the number of files you have. So that might be like compression. So if you have a WordPress website, there's a good plugin called the EWWW 3Ws optimizer. And that does what's called lossless compression, where it'll shrink the size of the images without making them blurry.
Oh, okay.
And that's really great. So even making small little tweaks like that will add up over the space of a year.
Do you want to share where people can go and find you if they want a little bit more information and connect with you?
Yeah, so the website is rootwebdesign.studio. And yeah, you can also find me on LinkedIn, and that's really the only place you're going to find me.
Are you doing a newsletter with Root, or are you keeping it minimal and just keeping it to blogs?
I mean, at the moment, it's just going to be blogs. I'll see how things progress, but at the moment, I'm just trying to keep things pretty minimal.
Amazing. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us, Paul. And I will share Paul's amazing website so you can take a look at the project and the low carbon design and web build that we've done. And yeah, do reach out to Paul if you're looking for a sustainable and ethical website for your business too.
Thanks, very much, Paul. Charlotte.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.